Welcome to today's episode of CLCI Live, brought to you by the award-winning and ICF accredited school, Certified Life Coach Institute. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
Hey everybody, hello. We're talking about. Well, let's put up our this first. It's CLCI Live, yeah. And then I'm gonna let Jerome take over here. Bye.
All right.
I like to hide.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put the topic on screen for you guys. We today are joining you for another Tuesday Live at 4 with the topic of fuel and friction. And this is an exciting topic. As I was doing research on it, it really, to me, kind of equated to motives, what motivates us, and blocks for something that's maybe a little bit more in the coaching language realm. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in. Fuel and friction. First, what do you guys I said what I see fuel and friction as. What do you guys see fuel and friction as? What does that kind of equate to you guys? Especially maybe if you have a second, talk about that translating in the coaching realm.
I guess fuel versus friction, not versus friction and friction. You got to consider both, but it seems like most people think about, fuel. They think about how to make the most attractive offering to people. But what they tend to neglect is the friction. What elements are making it more and more difficult, and what puts somebody close to the edge of buying something, but then stops at the last second and goes away.
Okay, so I'm hearing you speak about it in marketing terms, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm thinking about marketing.
Yeah, that definitely applies in the coaching realm, because we all, as a coach, definitely have to market ourselves, which is important. Do you guys have any other different definitions as far as just kind of what you perceive it to be?
Yeah, I think we have a tendency to do a groove the easiest way that we've been doing things. And when we try to add some new things, it might not be the comfortable groove we've become accustomed to. And so, like you said, Jerome, motivation. What's going to motivate us to stay in that new direction, and how do we keep it being beneficial to us? I mean, you can even think about it as I'm saying this out loud. When we're talking about fuel and friction, it's fueling the new direction, adding ways to make it easy, sustainable, and to add friction to our old ways, even so that we're not as utilizing that pattern, so that we are jumping out of our comfort of what we know. Maybe not trust. It may not be trust, but it's what we know. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. Mm-hmm.
I kind of just piggybacking off of what you said. What do you guys think is more important if you're trying to reach a goal? Adding more fuel or reducing that friction?
I think it's going to depend.
That honestly depends. If we're using physics as a strict metaphor, if you had a completely frictionless environment, you only need the smallest amount of force or fuel to push somebody. And if it's completely frictionless, it's always going to go where it's intended to go. In real life, though, you can't create completely frictionless environments. So you kind of have to balance. You have to decide where you're at, and then balance between, do I need more fuel or do I need less friction?
Well, I think that we as human beings have a tendency to focus on the fuel aspect. We have a tendency to try to build a bigger rocket. We have to try to make our product better. So if there's a problem, we look at, how we turn to our product first, the us, the I. What is the problem with us? What am I not doing right? Why am I not good enough? When in fact, we may not want to be putting that focus on that, which that's the fuel base, but when you're looking at the friction, you're taking I out of it, and you're looking at what is causing your client or your customer to what is keeping them from the behavior you desire. And it's putting yourself in their world, and it's having you think about them and not about you. And our natural inclination is, of course, to first think about us and not about the other. So that's sort of where which is kind of perfect when it comes to coaching, right? Is within the coaching space, we want to be thinking about the client, and not us and the I. So it's a great application therein.
I was just, as you were talking there, thinking about another way that we use it in coaching. We talk about flow, the flow of a session, right? So that flow, that easy, but there's times that we have some friction that get in there. So we're having a deeper conversation. So again, works in tandem.
I know there are various things that can cause friction. Can you guys think of like, sources of friction, what we might mean in a more tangible, real world kind of experience of what friction might be for a client or a customer, or anybody?
Well, marketing.
Well,
for students, marketing is definitely,
technically marketing is a fuel, you would say, but
marketing as a concept, I would
yes,
think.
having to actually market themselves would be the friction. Yes. But so if we look at, let's maybe bring a real world example. We can do this with us at CLCI. So we at CLCI, we offer we certify life coaches in 3 days, right? What are some of the things in our process, the process of somebody getting to our classroom and actually setting foot in the classroom, that could be, and whether or not we've addressed them, that could be a source of friction?
well, they have to go to the website. That's a step.
And they have to man it and figure it out and get it. Yes, absolutely.
If they're going to research anything, that's another step, or a few steps depending. Or if they've already been there, done that, now they've gone to the website and now they're going to the register button, and that register button brings you to options, and then you have another step.
I thought of a friction point right now. I don't know if I should say it on the live. It kind of has to do with the calendar. How the calendar is set up for people to see what classes are and aren't available. I'll tell you my idea after
But it's okay. We're going through that process. Potential friction moments are what we're identifying is things that could slow people down when it comes to getting to that final product, that final moment. What could take them and put the brakes on? And the inclination of a lot of people, if somebody wasn't buying our product, let's say, or coming in to get certified, we could be going, well, we need to make a better class, we need to hire better facilitators, we need to put more money into marketing, when in fact the issue might actually be that we need to look at the process of how they are getting to us and see what's getting in the way and see what's preventing them from and it's about getting in their shoes, and it's less glamorous, right? It's not as pretty as making a better class, or it's because you have to go and look at things that might be wrong or might be, causing some issues for them and fix them, which is it's work, right? But
we've done a good example of that, I think, with including teaching how to start a business and marketing in our third day, because if you didn't have that, or if we didn't have that, and it was all 3 days of just pure coaching skills, there's the friction point that somebody who's considering us might be like, well, I don't know how to even start a business. I don't want to start a class when I don't even know how to start a business or market myself as a coach. So there's a friction point, but we've removed that friction point by including it into the curriculum of our classes. Let's see, Vincent Lister, the perception that
well, and I'm not going to lie, that perception exists out there. It is a thing. Not in fact the truth, but that's okay.
I mean, I'm a shyster, but whatever. That's not a CLCI wide thing. That's just a me thing.
So with regard to friction and fuel, so any other thoughts for, let's say if I'm a new coach, right? I'm a brand new coach. I want clients to hire me. What kind of frictions could be happening that would keep the client from hiring you? What could be getting in the way that isn't about you, the coach, is about the client and their life experience, and maybe even the experience of hiring you?
I think maybe potentially just in general, them having reached out for help, maybe not necessarily reaching out to a life coach, but maybe they went down the path of, actually working with a therapist or something like that, and that didn't necessarily work out for them. Maybe exploring different avenues um, doesn't necessarily kind of uh, equate to them as the solution. So even though life coaching is much different than therapy, maybe they see that end result of them not receiving the help that they're looking for. Maybe that's still going to be something that's presented to them subconsciously.
Um, okay, so I think that it's almost falling into a fuel kind of thing, but let's break that down. So if it's about the end result, right? It's them not seeing the end result.
Mm-hmm.
How could you as a coach have them see that, I guess, and reduce that friction?
Great question.
As a coach, could you try to have like a trial session and ease them into something? If they're confused, if they're not sure what they're getting themselves into, offer a 20-minute introduction. Just chat. Let's just get to know each other. Let's reduce that friction that you might think life coaching could be, and let's use it to fuel you into further sessions.
That's a great, amazing, and you'll see a lot of coaches that do that. They do that. It's for two reasons. It's not just to reduce the friction for the client, that concern, and alleviate that stress for the client. It is also for the coach as well to see if they're a good match and if it's a good thing. But that is a huge way to reduce that friction. Amazing, thought there, and that's why a lot do that. I think another way is we can present testimonials, etc. But to show and demonstrate results, in such a way, and actually have people that have experienced those results and see them and put them out there. I think another possible friction for coaches who are trying to get clients and put themselves out there is kind of it's the path. It falls in the grounds of path of least resistance, essentially. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there are hoops that people have to jump through to get to the point of coaching, and reducing those hoops, all of those, and just getting more direct and to the point, I think can be very great benefit. Lisa, you have in couples coaching, any thoughts with regard to friction and how it comes into play?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of examples. Let's see if I can narrow down to a concept. It's in that space. What they're coming usually in is to find the fuel, right? To find something that's going to move them in a direction different than where they're at in that moment. Where they're at in that moment, there's more friction, and the wanting to be right is the friction, I think, a good portion of it. And it's not that they want to be right at times, they want to be heard as well. But that friction of their behaviors, because behaviors is a big part of this, right? We're talking about behavior changes through this conversation. And behavior change, we all want the other person to do the change. So there's more added friction versus fuel. Although the fuel would be the person, one side says, you've got to do the changing, so I'm going to push fuel here.
That's a push, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the other one says, you're the one or they may come to the realization that it's a we, but getting out of their own way to make those changes, they're not quite sure what they're willing to commit to. So there's friction in that space, but they want to add the fuel to, yeah, it's the conundrum.
Yeah. Well, the getting out of their own way is really what that friction is, right? That's
Mhm.
that's the moment, and that's why it is that you have to be thinking about your client, the other person, to reduce friction. You can't be thinking about you have to be thinking about their experience.
Mhm.
I know one of the tools to help manage depression and things like that is to do unselfish acts. Essentially, it's and it's actual like therapeutic. It's listed as a treatment essentially, and that because it gets you out of an I space and gets you into a space of thinking about other people and thinking about
Right.
and the same can be applied in relationships. I know we all sort of studied up a bit for this. And there's a mention of the negativity bias and how it takes about 5 bad things to fix one, or 5 good things to fix one bad thing.
Yeah.
And because of this bias, it would serve us a great deal of good to be reducing friction and take the time to think about how to reduce friction. Sometimes instead of creating like grand good acts of whatever, when it might actually do us a lot of good service to reduce friction as well. Now, as a coach, or part of this is also about how when we add fuel, like when we tell people what to do, what is the first inclination? Anthony, go do something.
No, absolutely not. Why?
Exactly.
Yeah, I immediately create friction. If you start, adding fuel sometimes has a inverse effect that you want. Where if you think, like, let's say for example, you get a customer wants to sign on as a client and they come to your website and they're just about to like buy and convert, but they don't. So what's one of the options you can do to add fuel? You could call them. You could keep calling them until they, block you or report you to the police for harassment. Sometimes that's an extreme example, but adding fuel and trying to put more fuel into the system isn't always a good thing, and it will have the opposite effect sometimes.
Do you know what could though potentially get your foot in the door? Is to ask that client why.
Yeah.
Why is it that you clicked away? Why is it if you I'm not here to sell. I don't want to I want to know, and it will be important to me why that happened. And to be genuine in that moment, you can learn a lot. And it's true. You're not going to have that resistance because the client doesn't think you're trying to sell them something, right? They think that you're trying to now you're inquiring about them. And what is everybody's favorite thing to talk about? Think about how did we experience our lives? Yes, me. Exactly, Kyle. Exactly. Kyle, what are your thoughts? You're sitting down there quiet.
on if you were to tell me something to do, of course the mindset is I don't like to be told directly what to do, but if you try to work with me to eliminate some of the friction that I might have in my life and let me speak it out on my own, this is my barrier, this is what's getting me from point A to B with the stumps. I think focusing on the friction rather than just giving me compliments and you're doing such a good job could be more could lead me more to success or progress rather than just saying this is what you need to do. It's talking about what's the friction from getting you to that point, which I think could encourage someone as a coach.
Jerome.
Yeah, subscribe. I want to say this connects really well to kind of as you mentioned, we did a little bit of research beforehand. There was a study that they were speaking about where there's a group of people trying to stop smokers from smoking, trying to quit smoking. And rather than have them, I'm not sure exactly how they got the participants to do this, but rather than have them actually, have the negative side effects of what smoking can do to you be recited to them, the smokers themselves. They got them to recite the negative benefits of being a smoker, and them subscribing to that process was much more effective in them making progress to quit smoking, which I think is, again, this is you subscribing to a process that makes it personal. And it, at the end of the day, we don't like people to tell us what to do, right? So if we subscribe to a certain particular process by simply even sometimes stating it, it can make it feel a lot more personal and I think more achievable for us because it's in our world now at that point.
It creates ownership, and we all like our own ideas the best, and sometimes we'll hold on to them to a fault. And so by simply bringing somebody into the process, right, and asking them why, having them be brought in, and this is what coaching is, right? This is coaching. Is we're not giving the answers, we're not telling them what to do. Instead, we are being a part of their process and being curious and asking about their process. That is coaching to a T. The solution to friction is to coach, essentially, which is kind of awesome.
Jerome brought up an
win
example. Jerome brought up an example where I think maybe friction isn't a bad thing that needs to be solved. Sometimes friction can be a good thing. So, for example, if we're talking about smoking, going back to what Jerome said, the government and the states have created friction in terms of smoking cigarettes, where there's more taxes on it and it's more difficult to acquire. They've raised in California, they raised the age to 21 to buy cigarettes, but it's to accomplish a goal in mind, is to have people stop smoking less. So by adding friction into that system, they've essentially achieved their goal by making it less desirable to do something. So to bring this into coaching, if your client has a goal in mind to stop doing something or change a certain set of behavior, maybe considering adding friction or an impediment of some sort might be beneficial, and maybe having them think about ways that they can sort of add friction to the system for whatever
I was just gonna ask, so how would we do that with a client? So if we are coaching and we are coaches, and we're gonna, does anybody have anything that any behavior they would like to temper, stop, or minimize?
I would like to stop eating fast food.
Okay, so Anthony would like to let's coach Anthony through stopping eating fast food and see if we can introduce some friction in the process.
So let me tell you why this is so difficult, because there's so little friction. Or let me speak not in the coach terms. Let me just pretend I'm a client who's not going to be using friction as a code word. I live across the street from a Subway, an In-N-Out, and a Baker's, and a Corky's, which is like a 24-hour like diner. So it is very easy for me to just walk out my door, smell all that delicious fast food, and I could literally walk to these fast food establishments and be back in like 10 minutes.
They do, and it's furthermore. Think about fast food; they have reduced friction. There's a drive-through. It's you're going to get in and out of there in under 5 minutes. You are.
I could realistically, while I work, I could go on the app for whatever restaurant I want, order the food for pickup, then on my lunch break, walk there, grab it, and come back and eat at home. So it is so easy for me to eat fast food when I don't necessarily want to do that as a long-term goal. I want to eat healthier. I want to plan my meals, but the fast food option is just right out. You guys can probably see it.
You're just light.
If you think about it, fast food is really like the kings of reducing friction. They are the kings of reducing friction. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're coaching Anthony through this, Anthony, how can you stop eating fast food?
How can I stop eating fast food?
Just throwing it out. Not the best question, but
I can have ready-made meals in my refrigerator there, that I cook on like Sundays or the weekend and have them ready so that when I get hungry and it's lunchtime, I can go put it in the microwave rather than walk across the street. But the problem is, though,
That's what I was just gonna.
it's right there, though.
So I mean, obviously, in the past, you've had this. You've always had the opportunity to go and make pre-made meals and have them ready in your fridge. You've always had this offer, this available to you. So, what is it that is preventing you from doing that?
Can you say that one more time?
Absolutely. So you've always had the option of creating, making it more convenient for you to eat out of your own fridge, right? Having the meals ready, having them ready to go. That way you're not hungry when you open the door and smell it. What has prevented you from doing that?
So, the effort to plan my meals for the week, budget my meals for the week, and then actually go to the store, get it all, and then cook an entire week's worth of food with very little counter space. Look, I got that's the counter space I got to work with, people. Okay, it's not a lot. I can't. It's very difficult for me to make a lot of food
So
in a short amount of time.
Really quick, just point out right now he's pointing out frictions, right? So he's pointing out things that are preventing him from this thing. So the frictions are the having to budget and plan. The frictions are having to cook them in his small kitchen. And there was a third as well. It was
planning,
going to the store,
planning all the food I'm going to get.
So, is there a way to reduce that friction?
I could hire somebody to do it for me.
So just taking a sidebar, we're having private chat back here. It's kind of fun. You guys are doing that, and then we're playing around with this concept. We were reading on this. It can be a motivator in the sense of, some people will use it to be an instigation to move towards something, right? This friction will. I want to be a bodybuilder. Somebody told me I couldn't be a bodybuilder. And so that's going to motivate me to move towards bodybuilding because I'm going to
that's fuel. That's adding fuel. So like we've added fuel.
But theirs was the friction, right?
The resistance. Well, they by forcing it on them, by giving them fuel, they've created that resistance. I think that there's three terms here. It's the friction, which is what keeps us from going, and then the resistance is when we sort of stop dead in our tracks and start retreating.
Right. So it's understanding how a person operates. That's where I was moving towards.
Yes.
Yeah. So understanding if that friction is the thing that propels them to add the fuel versus the fuel that allows that direction can go, which in our reading, we learned that if we apply too much fuel, it can just die really fast too.
Yeah, it can smother.
Okay. Sorry. Just catching everybody up what we're doing behind the scenes.
So with regard to Anthony, you had some moments. Yeah. How can you make that more seamless for you, reduce the frictions in your food preparing process?
So I know there's programs online that sort of help with like that. Like you put in your, I guess, budget of how much food you want to eat and your actual monetary budget. And you put in a few things like what kind of diet you want, like a paleo diet or, low fat, whatever. Decide all those factors and it puts it in and spits out like the ingredients you need to buy and how much they cost and how to like put a whole meal plan together.
So again, these solutions have existed and you're aware of them. So what has prevented you from doing those solutions?
That food sounds nasty.
And this is where the importance of this, while he's thinking, the importance of knowing is that friction is about exploration. And that's what makes it less glamorous. It's because we can have all these solutions, but there's a reason we don't pull the trigger. Like there's a reason that we don't, and we shop around, we window shop, and it's so when you're figuring out friction, when you're figuring out the true source of what is preventing people from purchasing or what is preventing, you have to dig deeper, and you have to there's another concept here that it's called the job to be done. So when somebody hires you for anything or you buy a product, you are buying it to complete a job and get that job done. If I am somebody who's building a product, it's more than just that the product has to do the job. It's that the way I deliver the product has to be perfect and tailored. The way that the customer purchases it, the way it gets given to them, the way the whole experience is as important as the product itself. And so there's a lot of elements at play when you're trying to dig into this thing. So we're doing that with Anthony right now and figuring out what the friction is. So why have you not done that?
I think the actual friction is I don't like cooking in my kitchen. It's annoying. I'm constantly banging my elbows against the fridge, the stove, and like whatever dishes are out there. It sucks. I hate it. You can either just move into a bigger place with a bigger kitchen. That's not realistic, though. Instead, is what I'm thinking is another solution I was aware of, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet, is doing the whatever food delivery service thing where like they have your meals out and
I do that. It's so convenient and stupid that I get annoyed when I don't have it. Like when something goes awry and for some reason I'm like, I can't have food in 2 minutes. What is going on? And I get so upset about it. And it's just become it's fantastic. I highly recommend them. But so what has prevented you there, out of curiosity?
Oh boy, this is going to turn into an actual coaching session. Cost has prevented me because it's more expensive. It's a service that does pretty much everything you want, but then it costs more. So now I'm vacillating between costs and
health,
ease of access and health. And there's a lot of these factors that takes some time. But in the meantime, I'm just trying to figure out how to not eat so much fast food when it's very available to me.
Just to make a point here, just to point out, so Anthony, pause. Time out. This would be a good moment to then now connect Anthony with the emotional relevance of not eating fast food, why he doesn't want to. And so we would, coaching, ask a series of questions that would get Anthony to then link to the emotional relevance of why it is that he wants to stop eating fast food, and then that will help him be more attached to his goal of not eating fast food, because I think this is a big indication that Anthony is not committed to not eating fast food, in truth. Which is not a coaching moment. That's why it was a big timeout.
Yeah, this entire time been wanting to say, come on, Anthony, fast food's delicious. Everybody loves fast food.
just do it. Who cares?
So
you know what I should do? Here's an idea. I should plan out my calories and my food schedule and only eat fast food. That's what I should do. Go the opposite direction.
What was the documentary where they just ate McDonald's for like a month?
Yeah. And he was perfectly fine.
So my question though, now this may not be a coaching moment again, but I'm just going to ask it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to never eat fast food again for the rest of your life? Is that the goal?
I think that outside of the coaching thing, I think that's probably an appropriate coaching question to ask.
Okay.
I think that's in the coaching space. Am I correct, Lisa? Is that question okay?
Yeah. I mean, it's challenging you. It's a challenging kind of question to see where your commitment lies and what, I mean, potentially, could it be a wrong question for someone? Sure. But it sounds like it's in alignment with what you've been saying.
Mm-hmm.
Only you can answer that in this moment, really, honestly, because you're
It was a wrong question. No, it's do I have to never eat fast food? No. I can make exceptions. I don't have to abstain from fast food, and there are healthier options and cheaper options as well. It's just the frequency is a little too much, so it needs to lessen a little bit.
So tell me, what exactly does lessening look like? Can you tell me what lessening is for you?
I make a spreadsheet. I need to have first. I go back into my bank account. I get a what is it called? Like in science, when you're doing an experiment, there's the test, and then there's the
Hypothesis?
no. There's the test
Placebo?
group that you test
Oh,
with.
you're
And
gonna do like an A/B test. You're gonna do like a placebo. Like, what
yeah, no, it's like the control.
control.
So the
Okay.
control is I look at all of my purchases of fast food within the past, let's say, 3 months, and I average it out per week.
Yeah. Do you have to be this specific? Can you? I mean, do you have?
Yes.
You can't. Okay. So you have.
That is
to
my client. That is my client journey. I'm going to be
Okay.
that specific.
All right. All right. All
I
right.
average
So
it out per week, and then I shoot for a goal of less than the average going forward, and I will try to like every week reduce that average until it gets to like say 0.
this goal is not very specific right now for me. I mean, I would say that we have a goal of going to do the spreadsheet and everything.
Mhm.
So are you comfortable with that being the goal? And then next session we can talk about the more specifics. Is that
Yes, but that is my goal now.
okay?
Okay.
There was one word that you said in there that you used, and I just want to ask about it. You said that you want to try to reduce each week and have less. You want to try to do that. Is that something that you want to try to do?
I'm going to reduce it. That's a subtle coaching moment right there where you're just basically asking them, are you lying to me or are you
Yeah. I got a question. Not to go too far off topic, but since it came up, is that maybe inappropriate to ask in a coaching session? I guess in that moment, we see Anthony's making progress on that specific goal, so maybe that would be okay. But in general, I feel like sometimes that can kind of throw off a client where, they say, I'm going to try, and maybe they really are going to try. And then you kind of challenging that with, are you going to try or are you going to do? Maybe
I
not.
didn't, but notice I did not say though, are you going to do? I said, I just want to ask a question when I want to ask about you trying. Is that something you're going to try to do?
Mhm.
And I did not give him the correction in that. I simply asked around the concept of try, and it could also be something that opens a door for them. That could be a further exploration moment where try, and maybe he's all right, you're right, I'm not committing, I suck at committing to things. That's really my problem.
I also suck at committing to things.
So it could be a chance for a deeper dive or deeper exploration by asking around that vocabulary and that choice of words. Right, Lisa? Am I wrong there?
Well, and because you guys are very familiar, you will get familiar with your clients, not as familiar as we are here necessarily. So we would probably
we're with each other 8 hours a day.
Well, I'm going to say that, we're going to probably use words that are going to challenge, but not with the sense of humor that we have here. I put in the chat, I would probably say, you mentioned you were going to try, define try to me. What does try look like for you in some fashion? So I would go down that path. Indeed. But the thing that I was noticing is when Anthony started the conversation, he was talking about eating more healthily. And then it went down to kind of the budgetary kind of discussion. So when you're thinking about what you're wanting your takeaway to be, Anthony, what do you think that's telling you?
My health is directly tied to my bank account. The more money I have, the healthier I am. And the less money I have, the weaker I become and more less fit.
And so how is eating around that going to contribute to what you're sharing?
I would say to be less of a goofball. The less money because it does eat up, fast food does eat up a big chunk of like my food budget, like on my credit card bill at the end of the month because it's so convenient. By reducing that sort of expenditure, I'll have less anxiety about what I'm spending my money on, and I'll be more willing to spend it on things that are pro my health. So maybe like joining a gym or something like that, or a fitness club sometimes, or doing active things that better my well-being rather than trying to stop doing things I think harm my well-being, mainly spending money and eating fast food. Which now that I'm thinking about, there's nothing really preventing me from doing the things I want to do because I'm doing other things that I shouldn't be doing. I could probably do both. I could eat fast food and also go to the gym. But I feel like I need to stop doing one thing before I start doing another because I'm bad at multitasking.
So what's
and
that?
that brings me to a whole other coaching session around being bad at multitasking.
That's not my goal, though. Also, I think we might have even detracted from the main point of this whole fake coaching session was adding friction as a good thing rather than trying to reduce friction, because it seems like we just did in this entire session was trying to reduce friction in a different area of my life, where maybe a question to ask myself would have been like, okay, how can I make getting access to the fast food more difficult?
Hide my keys.
Hide my keys.
He doesn't even have to.
He can walk.
He can walk.
Can a coach ask a client if they need fuel or if they need a friction?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you need fuel right now, or do you need some friction to? What do you need?
Maybe there's a different way to explain it too, because I think we as people are motivated in two ways: towards pain, away from pleasure, essentially, right? Or other way around, towards pleasure, away from pain.
Some people are for both.
Depends on who you are.
Well, some gray area there. With regard to that, you could ask maybe your client, what would serve you better? Being motivated or being, essentially counter motivated. And that could be going very south. Asking your client.
Oh man, we're talking about
might go into a realm you don't want to go.
But I also would say that Kyle's question, because he's aware of the vocabulary Anthony's can use and is talking, using those terms could work very beneficially as well.
How could you introduce that to your client in those terms? So would it be okay to be like, there's a term, fuel or friction? Friction stands for this, fuel stands for this. I'm just going to give you an explainer moment. What would serve you better in this? Is that giving them answers?
I think that is appropriate, but it's kind of like an amateur coaching move, because you're not speaking the client's language. You're trying to teach the client your language, which is kind of.
But it could be a tool. Fuel and friction could be used as a tool as a coach.
Make it into a PDF worksheet. Boom, you got a coach tool.
Well, that's true. Maybe it's in your marketing prior too, and that's a big part of your marketing. Fuel and friction. So what do you want? I'm the fuel and friction coach.
I'm a fuel only type of guy. I don't give friction.
And I provide the lube you need to get rid of all
Oh my God. Motivators are a big thing though that we can explore with coaching, and we do explore, and that's the fuel. And
that's essentially what a motivational coach is.
Yeah, but maybe
motivational coaches,
we should take just as much time to explore the frictions. Like what keeps you from being motivated? What negative things might motivate you? Like how can you negatively use things to I'm trying to think, not like to prevent you from doing. What roadblocks can you create? Can you make a block? Let's build some blocks instead of breaking them down. But it can't. I love that. It's a great point. It's a different way to look at it, and I kind of love it. It's kind of innovative.
Well, this is like a good example. Like,
put blocks in your way.
I'm probably going to use this metaphor in my blog now, but you like need for like to start a fire, to get an intended goal and to start a fire, you need both friction, which creates the heat, and you need the fuel source to create a fire. You can't have only fuel and only friction. You need a little bit of both.
Well, and that's the analogy that they give too with in the podcast that I wrapped me onto this quickly, was a bullet, right? When somebody asks you what makes a bullet fly, most people would say gunpowder, maybe aerodynamics. But the truth, I mean, aerodynamics plays a huge role in it. But most of us go to the gunpowder. We go to the fuel, the thing that's like going to propel it out. But in truth, if that bullet was shaped like a piece of paper, it will not fly the same because it's going to get a tremendous amount of friction.
Oh no, I've shot paper watts before. They fly.
Well, I mean like a flat piece of paper, not like a wadded.
Well, you can take the example to the bullet itself, because you have fuel, which is the gunpowder, and you have the friction element, which is the firing pin.
Yeah.
And you need both to actually cause the bullet to explode, because fuel will just sit there and never do anything unless there's the friction element. So, for example, when we talk about pain points in a client that cause them to seek out a coach, those are friction elements in their life that are causing them and motivating them almost, and a fuel element too, because they need something to sort of motivate them too.
The friction is the space we can live in, right? Forever. Like that's like we can be stuck in there. But then what happens is you add the addition of the inciting incident. So we can live in this space of sort of discomfort for long periods of time, but then something will happen, and that's the firing pin, right? That will then propel us into, we have to change, something has to be different, something, right? So you need both elements. You need the element of, I'm not happy with my life, it's been going on for long enough, blah, blah, blah. But we can exist like that until there's a major incident typically that goes on that rattles us enough to go, I need help. And that's that fuel. That's really like, and they're separate though, because there's the incident would be the fuel, the existence in sort of like, I'm not mediocrity or what have you, or complacency, is the friction. But when you combine them, boom, you have change, and you have motivation, you have movement, you have momentum. So
would it be fair to say that we live in pretty much our entire lives, they're just made up of friction? Sometimes you get a little too much friction, so you utilize some of that fuel to go in a direction to kind of, work away from that friction, I would say.
It was funny because I had an opposite thought the other day where I was like, we're always doing something. Like, we're always doing something. It may not be productive, but we're always doing something. Like, we're laying, we are dying, we're doing, right? Yeah. We're always doing things. And so we're always existing sort of in the state of fuel, like moving. And then what happens is we get frustrated when friction sort of starts, like it gets in our way. It like keeps us from doing whatever it is we want to do. And when it's enough of it, it puts us dead in our tracks. So similar, like both is true. I think both are true. And if you just a different perspective, a different way of looking at it.
This whole conversation also is just an exercise in like, how far can we take a metaphor?
Right.
Right. Like something to like bring something very complicated down to like, its bare essentials that we can kind of talk about and apply to a lot of different scenarios. So for the viewers, what we're saying is not like the end all be all truth of life. It's just a metaphor to sort of help interpret like the client's journey and like what may or may not be motivating them and working against them. We use a lot of different terms like blocks.
The takeaway though is when it comes to your clients, when it comes to getting them, like before they've even come in the door, and also when you're working with them, the fuel and friction element is not about you. It's about them. It's about exploring their frictions, exploring their fuels, and learning about them. And that's true from the beginning, from before they've even met you. And that's true all the way through the process. So in your marketing, in your everything, it should ultimately always be about them and exploring more and learning about them. And this is just more proof of that.
Yeah.
I see heads nodding, I guess.
Yeah, this conversation I think is extremely applicable to coaching, because of exactly that aspect. It's not about you; it's about your client. And digging deeper into what can pretty much essentially alleviate some of that friction is, to me, I think a major portion of what a coaching session is. And I asked it earlier in the stream. I think my personal conclusion as to whether removing friction is more beneficial, just in general, or adding fuel. I think removing that friction, to me, is probably a more important aspect of this conversation, and that's probably why I went with that analogy when I said we live in a world of friction, and whenever you start feeling that a little too hard, then you use some of that fuel to kind of go in whichever direction you need to either alleviate it or fight back against it.
5 times more. And I'm going to shut up after this because I talk too much. I've worked with several coaching clients, and the inclination so much of the time is, I need to charge less. I need to charge more. I need to build a program. I need to be doing webinars. Maybe it's none of those things. Maybe what it is you need to be putting yourself in the shoes of your client, your potential client, and asking what is preventing them from basically hiring you, because they're probably already sold on you. If there's something preventing them from giving you their money. If they're your fan, they're following you. But for some reason they're not converting. You got to ask, okay, what else is going on? And it may have nothing to do with you. And so it might have to do with you seeing how you can help solve a problem that has nothing to do with you, which is kind of a very selfless act. And also why people don't love to do this exploration. So the good example they gave was, if there was a company that had these amazing couches that was customizable, nobody's buying them, but they're spending hours designing them. The problem was, well, it's because people already had couches and they had no clue what they were going to do with their existing couches and how to get rid of them and what to do with how to handle them. The solution: we'll pick up your couch when we deliver this one, which is going to make the person who's making the couch, it does create a problem for them, right? They have to now handle the problem so it's a selfless thing, but done so to better their business, and their sales went through the roof after that, because that was the problem, and it had nothing to do with them and their product. It had to do with the fact that people had couches and no clue how to get rid of them. Yeah. So the solution may not have anything to do with you ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Or it could have everything to do with you. Like, there was another example that I listened to where there was, I forget which school it was, but they were asking for very personalized submissions to actually go ahead.
It had nothing to do with the school itself, though. It had to do with the process, like, that they were putting them through.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, as opposed to other schools, which maybe even wouldn't be as prestigious or considered as prestigious, they were getting many more applicants because the process was just much easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's
never make things more difficult for your customers and clients.
Path of least resistance.
Just give them the path of least resistance. The less web pages they need to go on, the less clicks that they need to get the product or your services, the better.
And if it's still not working, maybe ask them. I mean, get out of the space, maybe, and ask the questions that you're maybe have been too afraid to ask. Why is this going on? Why is this happening? And because you might discover that it's not about your website and it's not about your advertising. It's about something else entirely. Yeah. And then maybe there's a way for you to solve that. Yeah.
If you are a coach on your first time and you talk to a client, would you be necessarily looking for their fuel and looking for their friction? Or is it too soon to predict on that first conversation? Do you really need to get to know somebody to determine what's really fueling them and what's their frictions?
I think that no, I think you can find out a lot in the first conversation, because that first conversation person is the one that's going to hire you, right? That's no, people don't always know why they're being motivated. And I think a single person is not a fair sampling. I think that I would say you want to have talked to 20 or 30 different people and then ask the same question different ways or multiple times of the same person, because we as people don't often, it's the forefront at first answer is often not the right. I'm not going to say right or wrong. It is the right answer at that moment or for them, but there's a lot behind it that we might be missing. And so give people the opportunity to answer your question more than once. And because the first answer is not law and not always the full picture. So ask again, ask in a different way. Is that, I'm delayed? Am I delayed?
No,
No, I don't think so.
I think we're about to wrap it up, though.
Yeah, I'm just noticing
I was just
how
gonna-
dark it is getting in everyone's screen thanks to daylight savings. It looks like
I know. I was like, I need more
Yeah.
lighting in my house now. I need bright.
So do we have closing thoughts on friction versus fuel? I can say mine. It's like driving a car. You have pedals to both apply friction, the brakes, and a pedal to add fuel. And you can't drive a car with only using the gas or only applying the brakes. You need to accurately control both and decide for your purposes and goals what you need to do. But being aware that friction and fuel are factors, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna beat that analogy. Who's next?
I'll try. I guess it really just equates to
Try, I dare you.
I mean, to me, it equates to something that a lot of people try and pursue, which is balance. Me being an advocate in that, which I feel is impossible, but it is that process of going through both fuel and friction that kind of makes everything kind of move and go and make sense. Again, as Anthony was mentioning, there can't be one without another. I mean, I guess there could, but there wouldn't be a whole lot of action going on. So being receptive to both.
Too much action.
We would just be like, "Wah!"
Yeah,
You
but
get
I
an
think
explosion.
what's important is just being receptive to both and understanding that they both exist, and they both are necessary components, I think, in this conversation to create action.
So I'm going to go with some remembering the friction piece is what's preventing the ease of the next movement analysis, where fuel can be added to create removing those blocks to allow that next step to be an easier solution than having to go through many things. I was reading Netflix had got the corner market on it because they now have that ability to just start your next session you're watching, whatever you're watching program wise, it just goes to the next program.
Yeah.
With removing having to pick up your remote and push play, they took away the friction and they got more people watching and stayed watching. So that was kind of an interesting piece that I read.
Their entire business model is built around reducing. I mean, seriously, I mean, that if you look at the history of it, it's kind of. I mean, they're pretty amazing. And then Blockbuster. I'm sorry, Blockbuster. We were doomed from the start.
Kyle, do you have closing thoughts?
I can't top your car analogy because I think that's perfect. You need to be mindful of the friction and you need to be mindful of the fuel, and things work at appropriate times of what's going on and what your problems are. If you need more fuel, it's okay to be receptive to your fuels and let that motivate you. If you need some friction and you need the barriers to let you realize this is not what's going to get me to where I want to be, then throw some friction. Realize what your barriers are and let those be mindful to you. So fuel and friction, and the car analogy is probably the best that you can do. You need to apply the brakes when the right time is to, and you need to give some gas when you need to get there.
I agree. I completely agree. I have no final thoughts other than if anybody out there is like our Jerome here and they hate it when it gets dark earlier and it makes them sad.
Please message me so we can have a support group and we can start one of those, because I absolutely hate when it's dark out. Yeah, We'll get past it. I'll get past it.
I apologize that there's a friction created by time change in the seasons. Jerome.
Also,
help I would.
Lisa put in the car analogy first before I said it. I just saw it in the chat.
Nice.
I was reading the private chat. I wasn't reading the sidebar chat where like everyone else sees it. And I independently came up with it, but I am not the first to say it.
I was giving him guff in the background. I'm going, hey, you stole my car.
I didn't see it. Lisa, that is a good example, though. I will give you credit as first dibs. There's a timestamp as well, so everybody knows.
Great minds think alike, right?
Mm-hmm. There you go. That's the way. Real quick before we sign off, I want to again ask anybody watching out there in the world, if you have anything you want us to talk about, put it in the comments. Do it. I challenge you, if you're watching this right now, to put a topic in the comments. Do it.
And I want to say, if you enjoyed this, share it with your friends, give it a like, please. And join us next week, because we will have another intriguing, interesting topic for you guys to join in on.
I was just going to share what that is. Next week's topic is, just so everybody knows, coaching tools for Thanksgiving success. So we'll be giving actual tools and techniques to make sure that you have a great Thanksgiving.
To bring to your Thanksgiving.
We have to know how to move away from the politic conversation. What is that?
No fuel.
And no turkey. More ham than turkey. No one likes turkey.
So that'll be our next week's topic. And I think the following week we're doing simple questions you can bring to Thanksgiving dinner.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I know, it will be. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching out there. Make sure you comment, leave a topic, and share this with everybody you know. Darn it.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, this is brought to you by Certified Life Coach Institute. We're an ICF accredited school who certifies our life coaches in 3-day online intensive courses. In addition to other podcast episodes, feel free to check us out every Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube or Facebook for our CLCI Lives, where we get together and discuss various topics that are centered around sharpening your skills so you can become a better certified life coach. For more information, feel free to visit us at certifiedlifecoachinstitute.com. Until next time, be well.